The storm raged across the mountain range like a wild beast as lightning tore through the night sky. Wind howled through the cracks of the ancient rocks, and rain lashed against the cliffs in unending fury. In the shadow of those mountains, a young man named Arik struggled to hold his worn cloak around his shoulders. His small campfire had long been swallowed by the rain, but he pressed on because he had seen something in the distance. A strange glow that did not belong to the thunder or the stars. It was something alive. Arik was a wanderer, a hunter of the wild paths who made his life by moving from one forgotten place to another. He had no family, no friends, only his pack and the stories he carried within his mind. That night, however, something would change the course of his lonely life forever. He climbed higher over slick stones until the light grew brighter and a faint sound reached his ears. It was a sound he had never heard before, yet something about it made his chest tighten. It was the sound of crying. Not a human cry, but a soft, keening echo that trembled with fear and pain. He reached the top of a ridge, and there it was, a nest of shattered stone half buried under the remains of a broken mountain tree. The glow came from within. Arik stepped closer through the rain and looked into the nest. Inside were 3 small creatures huddled together beneath the broken shell of what had once been a massive egg. Their bodies shimmered faintly with golden light, their scales thin and fragile. Each one trembled from the cold and made small, helpless noises. He knew at once what they were, and his heart nearly stopped. Dragons. Every tale and song across the land spoke of dragons as beings of ruin. They burned cities and devoured armies. Even a single adult could wipe out a kingdom in a night. No one had seen one in centuries, and most believed they were extinct. Yet here were 3 hatchlings, their mother gone, their nest destroyed by the storm. Arik stared at them, unsure what to do. Part of him screamed to run to leave before the mother returned. But another part, the part that still remembered the ache of being alone, could not. They were so small, so lost, and he knew they would die before morning if he left them. He knelt beside the nest and slowly reached out a hand. One of the hatchlings lifted its tiny head and blinked at him. Its eyes were molten gold like the heart of the sun. It gave a soft sound and nuzzled against his fingers. The touch sent warmth up his arm, and for a moment the storm seemed to fade around him. "All right," he whispered. "I will help you." He gathered the hatchlings one by one into his cloak. They were surprisingly light yet warm as embers. As he descended the ridge, the storm broke apart above him, as if the heavens themselves had paused to watch. By the time he reached his shelter among the rocks, the rain had softened to a mist. He built a new fire and set the hatchlings near it. They curled close together, making faint rumbling sounds that might have been purrs. Arik dried his cloak and tore bits of dried meat to feed them, but they refused to eat. They only watched him with bright, unblinking eyes. He did not know what dragons ate, but he had once read in an old text that the young fed on warmth and the essence of living flame. So he held his hands over the fire and let them feel the heat. The glow within their bodies brightened as they absorbed it. Days passed, and the storm gave way to clear skies. Arik built a rough shelter deeper in the valley using old timbers and stone. The hatchlings grew stronger each day, their wings stretching, their scales deepening in color. One was golden, one crimson, and the third silver, pale as frost. He gave them names born of the old language he had learned from travelers. The golden one he called Aurin, the crimson he called Vera, and the silver he named Thal. At first they were restless and wild. They hissed when he drew near and flared their wings when startled. But Arik was patient. He spoke softly to them each day, telling stories of the world beyond the mountains. He shared what food he had and even hunted for them, learning to bring down small animals they could feed upon. Slowly, they began to trust him. One morning, as the sun rose through the mist, Aurin climbed onto his shoulder and let out a small spark of fire. It did not burn him. Instead, it felt like the warmth of dawn itself. Vera followed soon after, curling around his arm, while Thal preferred to perch upon the roof of the shelter, watching the skies. Weeks became months. Arik no longer wandered. The valley became his world. He tended to the dragons as a father would to his children, teaching them to fly, hunt, and listen to the wind. They learned quickly, their strength growing at a pace that astonished him. When they played, the air shimmered with power. When they slept, their breathing filled the valley with the hum of ancient magic, but the peace could not last forever. Travelers sometimes crossed the outer passes, and tales began to spread of strange lights seen over the mountains. Some said the dragons had returned. Others believed it was the curse of the old gods. Armies began to gather in the south, fearful of what might come. Auric knew danger was near, but he could not abandon his dragons. They were his family now. When winter came, he built a great hearth within a cave to keep them warm. He spent nights carving runes into the walls, symbols of protection drawn from forgotten lore. The dragons watched him, their eyes glowing softly as if they understood. One night, as the snow fell outside the cave, Orin lifted his head and spoke. The voice was not formed of human tongue, but Auric heard it within his mind, clear and steady. "You have given us life, Firekeeper." "We remember." He froze, his heart pounding. "You can speak." "In the way of our kind," Orin said, "our words reach not ears, but hearts. You are bound to us now." Vera's voice followed, softer but fierce. "You could have left us to die, yet you stayed." "We will not forget." Thal looked at him from where he rested upon the stone ledge. "But the world beyond hates what we are. You will be hunted if they find us." Auric looked into their eyes and smiled faintly. "Then they will have to pass through me first." The dragon's eyes gleamed with something that might have been pride. Years passed. Auric aged, but the dragons grew into their full splendor. Their wings spanned the sky, their roars echoed for miles. They hunted far from the valley, returning only to rest. Yet they always returned to him. They brought him gifts from the world beyond Jewel's bones, and once a silver crown from a fallen lord. Auric laughed at that and told them he had no need for crowns. But peace again was shattered when men came. A host of soldiers carrying banners of crimson and gold. They had tracked the dragons to the valley, drawn by stories of the fire beasts that had returned. Their leader, a high lord named Kalen, claimed that the creatures must be destroyed before they brought ruin to the kingdoms. Auric stood before them, unarmed, his hair now streaked with gray. "They are not beasts of ruin," he said. "They are life-given form." "Leave them be," Kalen sneered. "You protect monsters, old man. Step aside or burn with them." The wind rose. From the cliffs above came a sound that shook the world. 3 shadows descended, wreathed in light. The soldiers fell to their knees as the dragons landed behind Auric, wings, spread eyes blazing. Orin's voice thundered in their minds. "This human is under our fire. Harm him and your ashes will feed the earth." Kalen lifted his sword, but his hand trembled. Auric raised a hand to the dragons. "Enough," he said. "No blood tonight." "Let them see what mercy is." Vera growled low, but obeyed. The soldiers fled, leaving their banners behind. Auric turned to his dragons, weary yet proud. "Violence will only bring more violence," he said. "We must find another way." They listened, though the fire within them burned for battle. Auric knew that peace would be fragile for as long as humans feared what they did not understand. But he also knew something deeper. The dragons were not meant to hide forever. One day the world would need them again, and when that day came, he hoped they would remember kindness. The years rolled forward like the endless river of time, and the valley of Auric grew into a hidden sanctuary. Grass once thin now grew tall and green. Trees blossomed around the caves where once only stone had ruled. Orin, Vera, and Thal flew often beyond the peaks, yet always returned before nightfall. Their bond to Auric was strong, unbroken by the passing of seasons. Though their bodies grew vast and their flames burned hotter, their hearts had never forgotten the warmth of the man who had given them life. Auric had grown old. His hair had turned white as mountain frost, and his hands trembled when he carved runes into wood. Yet his eyes still held the same fire that had once guided him through the storm. He no longer hunted for food, nor built new shelters, for the dragons had done so for him. They gathered stones and trees, shaping them with flame into a small home carved into the cliff itself. It stood like a fortress of warmth and memory. Often Auric would sit upon the ledge of his home, watching the dragons soar through the skies. He would remember the day he first found them, small, trembling creatures lost to the storm. He had not known what fate had bound them together, but now he understood. The dragons had been his destiny and he theirs. One evening, as twilight painted the mountains in hues of red and silver, Orin landed beside him. The dragon's golden scales glowed with the light of the dying sun. "Firekeeper," Orin said in his deep, rumbling tone, "the world beyond grows restless again. Men gather armies. They speak of purging what they call abominations." Arik sighed softly. "They still fear what they do not understand. They fear what they cannot control," Orin replied. "They know our fire could burn their kingdoms to dust. Yet you have not done so, because you taught us mercy." Arik smiled faintly. "Then hold to that lesson, my son." Orin lowered his head, his great eyes glowing softly. "We will protect you, Arik. No man will harm you while we breathe." But the old man shook his head. "One day I will not be here, Orin. My time draws near. What I ask of you is not vengeance nor war. When I am gone, live as more than dragons of flame, be keepers of life." Vera and Thal landed soon after hearing his words. The Silver One, Thal, spoke with quiet sorrow. "You speak as though your fire fades." "It does," Arik said with a gentle smile, "but that is the way of all humans. We burn bright for a short while, and then we rest. Yet my heart is at peace. I have seen the skies filled with your wings. I have felt your warmth. That is enough." They bowed their heads in silence. The mountain wind carried the scent of pine and ash. The stars began to bloom overhead like the embers of creation itself. Arik sat between his dragons and closed his eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of their breath. He felt no fear, only the quiet certainty that love leaves echoes stronger than any flame. When dawn came, the dragons found him still sitting upon the ledge, his face peaceful, his hands resting upon his knees. The Firekeeper had gone beyond the reach of mortal air. For a long time, none of them spoke. Then Vera lifted her head and let out a cry that shook the mountains, a cry of sorrow that burned the clouds away. They buried him beneath the heartstone of the valley. Orin melted the rock until it became a shining monument of gold and flame. Upon it they etched his name with their claws. Around the grave they planted trees of ash and cinder whose leaves shimmered red in the light of the setting sun. From that day, the valley was no longer a place of hiding, but of remembrance. Time passed again, as it always does. Decades turned into centuries. The world of men changed, kingdoms fell and rose anew, yet the dragons remained. They watched from afar, seldom seen by human eyes. They kept the fire of Arik's lessons alive within them. They guarded the balance of the earth, burning away the shadows that sought to consume it. But not all men had forgotten. Stories spread across generations of the dragons who protected the hidden valley and the man they once called father. Many disbelieved such tales, yet some sought the truth. Among them was a young woman named Ilara, a scholar and explorer from a far southern land. She had heard the legend of the Firekeeper and traveled for years to find his valley. Her journey was harsh. She crossed frozen peaks and black forests, fought off wolves and storms, until at last she reached the mountains said to house the dragons. What she found was silence. The air itself seemed to hum with power. She stepped into the valley, and there it was, green and golden beneath the eternal snow. The Heartstone stood at its center, glowing faintly as if touched by sunlight, even in shadow. She approached and read the ancient runes. Though she did not understand their language, she felt their meaning. They spoke of life, love, and fire that never fades. As she knelt before it, a vast shadow passed overhead. She looked up and gasped. A dragon circled the valley, wings like thunder in motion. It landed upon the ridge, and its golden eyes watched her with ancient calm. "Who enters the valley of the Firekeeper?" a voice echoed within her mind. Ilara's knees shook, but she spoke bravely. "My name is Ilara. I seek knowledge of the man who raised the lost hatchlings of legend." The dragon stepped closer, its breath warm upon her face. "That man was Arik. Long has his fire slept within this stone. You knew him." The dragon's eyes softened. "He was our father." Ilara stared in awe. "Then you are the children of the storm, the hatchlings who became the keepers of flame." "Yes," the dragon said, "and now you stand where he once stood. Tell me, human, what do men seek now? Do they still dream of conquest?" Ilara lowered her gaze. "Many do, but some seek peace. Some wish to learn what was lost. Then you are one of those few. I wish to be." Orin lowered his massive head until his eyes were level with hers. Then listen well, child of men. The fire of understanding begins with compassion. Your kind once feared us because they saw only destruction. But one human saw life. He gave us warmth when the world gave us death. And because of that we live. Because of that we protect. Alara felt tears rise unbidden. He changed the world, did he not? In ways unseen, Orin said. For every flame he lit still burns within those who choose kindness over fear. As he spoke, the sky above began to glow with the light of dawn. From the cliffs, Vera and Thal appeared, their wings unfolding like banners of light. The three dragons gathered around the Heartstone and bowed their heads. Fire flowed from their mouths, gentle, not fierce, forming a halo around the grave. The flame rose high, then split into three trails that curved through the sky like rivers of gold. Alara watched breathless as the valley shimmered in the new day. It was as though the world itself remembered. Orin turned to her again. Carry this story with you. Let no one forget what a single act of mercy can create. Tell them that dragons do not thank easily. Yet to the one who gave us life we are forever grateful. Alara nodded, her voice trembling. I will. She left the valley that evening. Behind her, the dragons lifted into the heavens, their roars echoing across the peaks. She carried the tale back to her, people writing it into scrolls and songs so that the name of Auric would never fade. Generations later, when the world faced another age of darkness and men once again called upon power to save themselves, a legend spoke of a golden fire that would descend from the skies when the hearts of humankind were pure enough to call it. And one night, when war clouds covered the stars, a child stood upon a broken wall and prayed for light. The heavens answered with thunder, and three dragons emerged from the storm, their wings ablaze with dawn. They burned away the darkness and guarded the weak. When peace returned, they vanished once more, leaving behind trails of fire that shone like tears in the sky. People called it the dragon's memory, and deep within the valley beneath the Heartstone, the earth glowed faintly, as though it too remembered. For even after centuries, the dragons would sometimes return to that sacred place. They would land beside the stone and whisper through the wind, "Thank you, Firekeeper. Your warmth still guides us." And in the hush between the wind and the flame, if one listened closely, one might almost hear a human voice answer back, filled with quiet joy. "My children, I am proud of you. The fire never truly died. It simply changed form, becoming part of the endless rhythm of life. The dragons who once were feared became the unseen guardians of harmony. The valley became a legend, a myth told around fires by those who still believed in hope. And among the stars that shone brightest on clear nights, some said they saw three burning points of gold, crimson, and silver circling a smaller one, pale and gentle. They called it the Firekeeper's star. Thus ended the tale of the human who raised the lost hatchlings of the deadliest dragon, not knowing that one day the fire he kindled would thank him across all ages of the world.